Hello everyone, this is Mike and welcome back to the channel. And also, welcome to my Build a Script series, episode 1. So this will hopefully be the first of many videos that I'm going to be recording that take some type of admin task and I write a PowerShell script for it completely from scratch. So start with a blank slate and develop a script along the way. So with this, I will be writing the script, explaining the logic, the decisions, the structure as I go through it. So a lot of it I'll be explaining as I go. However, some fundamental tips, I'm not going to be able to cover all of that and be able to keep this video at a decent length. So if you kind of look through my channel, you'll find some supplemental videos getting into working with objects, working with help, using get member, different script constructs, things like that. So have a gander at those videos as well. So in this first episode, I'm going to be putting a script together that finds stopped services on remote computers. So this is something that we can use to point at one or more computers and basically tell us of any services on them that are not running. So maybe Active Directory is not running, IIS is not running, the print spooler service is not running, something along those lines, which can be used as a starting point for maybe troubleshooting if a computer is not working correctly or not. Like all the services that are supposed to be automatic if they're for whatever reason not running at that moment. So with this, I would like it to accept one or more computer names on a parameter, accept computer objects from Active Directory, right? Because that may be where your computer names will be coming from. Work with pipeline input, so I'd like to be able to pipe in the computer names either as Active Directory objects or from uh, strings potentially. And query using one of two different protocols. So use the protocol that PowerShell remoting uses, WSMan, or use the protocol that SCCM uses, DCOM or WMI. So either way, get a choice if, let's say, one doesn't work and the other one would, depending on your environment here. So this would allow the user running the script to pick what protocol they want to use to contact the computers within the script. Right? So that's kind of what we're up to here. Right, so let me switch over to my lab environment here. And as you can see, I've got just a blank PowerShell console open here, but however, let me open up here and use the ISE. And again, we're starting, kind of completely from scratch here. Okay. So that's where we are beginning the journey. Okay. Now, as I mentioned with this, we're wanting to query services. Okay. So we probably want to just maybe try some commands here and see if that would work. Right. So you could potentially, if I wanted to query, let's say I'll just, query a single service and go at, a remote computer. So I have two VMs in my lab environment here. I have DC1 and client1, and try to query from that remote computer. All right. Now, this is, unless somebody came in and changed my lab environment on me without me looking, this is most likely going to fail. Because the most common commandlet that we use for querying services is get service. Now that happens to use DCOM or WMI, right? Which is not open by default on a computer when you're just installing it with its default. So it would take a changing of a firewall rule, something like that. Okay, so maybe you have that open in your environment. Like if you use System Center Configuration Manager, that's the protocol that it uses, so that might already be open. So that might be one thing to use. So in my lab environment, that's not really going to work too well. So I could use the same commandlets, the same protocol that PowerShell remoting uses. So that would be get sim instance. So I can query for a particular, not sim session, query for a particular class in this case, we want Win32 underscore service, and the computer name, we're going to go query client one. All right, now, so that should give me, okay, it gave me a lot of results here, right? So this used the WSMan protocol to do that, or the Windows name for its WinRM, Windows Remote Management. Okay, so that went ahead and worked. All right, now I could also query this same piece of information, the same class from the same computer that's held in basically like a database that we call the management repository. I could query that as well using the same protocol that this uses, get service, using get WMI object. Right? So in my particular case here, that's not going to work. But I can at least show that we could do that. So basically with the same in essence parameters, if you will, get WMI object, and then let's just do class. There we go. Um, and actually, let me cancel that. So again, that's going to fail because it's using the DCOM or the WMI protocol to do it, which I don't have open on that other computer. But my point with this is it's getting the same information. So what my script is going to use is I'm not going to use get service at all. I'm going to use get WMI object and get sim instance. So the rest of the info is the same, and the data that it draws back is also the same. So that can allow me to, in essence, use one or the other in my script without too much extra work going on with it. Right? So if we wanted to do that. So let me just show real quick here that this does actually work. Just query the local computer and you can see it does bring some information back. Right? Now, the other thing that I do want to note here is that for each service that's brought back, you can see there's a state, which is whether it's running or stopped, and a start mode. Right? So that's kind of different than the properties that are brought back from get service. So this is using get sim instance, get WMI object. They're querying the management repository. So the objects they bring back have different properties. It ultimately represents the same thing, a service running on your computer, but the properties are named different than if I'm doing like get service. If I'm doing get service, this is bringing back a .NET object, and you'll notice the properties are just named different. So this is, status and start type, right? So just be aware of that, okay? I mean, we could fix that if we wanted to, but in essence, um, we're going to be going with the properties out of the object that is in the management repository or the WMI database, if you want to refer to it as that. Okay. Okay, so let's put this together here. All right. Now, ultimately, again, the command that I'm going to be running here, um, we're going to want some parameters with it. So we'll go ahead and put together the basics of a script here. So I'll start off with commandlet binding at the top of my script. That will be useful to turn on any advanced function behavior I want to enable within PowerShell. So that's something I typically put at the top of most of the scripts that I use. Then we'll have a parameter block, open and close it up. All right, and I know I'm going to want to query a computer. So we'll go ahead and make a parameter that takes string and call it $computer name, okay, as a starting point here. All right. Now, so then into the body of the script, and we want to utilize that. So let's say we'll do get sim instance. The class that we wanted was Win32 service. And we want to use a WMI filter to grab just the results that we're going to need. Not the whole caboodle here. We want just services that meet a particular parameter, if you will. So basically, I want stop services. All right. So in the management repository, that would be looking at the state. So in this case, we'll say the state equals stopped. Right? And I wrote this specifically like this because this is not PowerShell. This is in here. This is a WMI query. Okay, so I'm using a commandlet that queries this management repository or this WMI database, and you have to use the WMI query language to do that. So that's what this filter is here. All right, so we'll do that. And we want to find ones that, let's say just for beginning point here, let's say we want the start mode equaling auto, right? So let's say we want something like that. Um, and let's see, let's clean this up a little bit here. And we also want a parameter, because we're querying remote computers, $computer name, put that there. All right. Now, unfortunately, when you're writing this code here, it kind of scrolls off a little bit. So you could either kind of widen your console out here if you wanted to do that. Or another trick you can use is usually you can put carriage returns in different places here and still have PowerShell treat it as one line of code. And after a pipe symbol, you can do that. After a comma, a semicolon. But I don't really have that here. So a trick that I can use is right before the next parameter there, I can throw a backtick and then do a carriage return. And PowerShell will still treat this as one line of code. Okay, so basically the backtick acts as an escape character for whatever comes after it, which would be the carriage return. So you're escaping the carriage return so PowerShell doesn't see it. Now be careful with that though, because if you like forget this space here, it's very easy to have PowerShell mess it up. So if I just put the backtick like right here, like this, what PowerShell's really going to see when it runs it is that, okay, which is, there's no class called this. So it wouldn't know what to do with it. So typically, if you're going to put a backtick after the data portion of one parameter to then the start of the next parameter, make sure you have a space there. All right, so I'll do the backtick, enter, and there we go. All right, so that should at least be enough to get us started. All right, so I'll go ahead and save this script, put it in my C. Let's maybe make a folder here called data, put it in there, and maybe we'll just call this script one. All right, just to give it a name, just to begin. All right, and let's see if this works here. So in my console, and again, I always run the script in a separate PowerShell session than the one I'm developing it in. So that way there's no remembering of variables or anything like that. I get a fresh running of it. So let's change over to the data folder, and then we'll run script, provide a computer name, and see that it works. Let's try a different computer, client 1, and see that it works as well. All right, cool. So that gets me a beginning point here. So I'm kind of, starting off here. Now, what I probably want to do is make this so I could have this work with, let's say, multiple computer objects. Okay, so computer name, we can go ahead and add the brackets right there. That'll allow this parameter, the computer name parameter, to accept multiple strings. And I'm probably going to add another element up here in this parameter here. And then in the argument list inside the parentheses, I'm going to declare mandatory. Now, some people will do mandatory equals true, but you don't actually have to put the equal true part. You can just have mandatory, and that in essence is declaring that that argument as true. All right. So that would make that a mandatory and would make it accept multiple values. And then what I would want to do is use a for each construct to work through each of the computer names. So let's say I need a variable to represent each single computer that's supplied. So maybe I'll do $PC in and then $computer name, like so, and then open up my script block, the code I want to run, and then closing off the script block. All right, and then inside the script block, $PC. All right, so something like that. Okay, so let's save that and let's make sure that that still works as well. So we query client one, and let's see if we can query two computers at the same time. Awesome. All right, so there's the client one output, there's the DC1 output. All right, cool. So that's getting us another step in the journey here. All right. Now, before we start messing with it a little more here, I might want to clean the output a little bit. Like I don't want process ID, I probably want name, start mode, state, PS computer name. So I probably want those fields, but I don't necessarily want anything else. Right? So we could clean that up. If, for instance, like we wanted to take the output of this and pipe it over to, let's say, select object. So I'll just bring that down to the next line here. So we'll do select object, property, PS computer name. So that would be the name of the computer. We'll do name of the service. What did we want? The state and maybe the start mode. Okay, something like that. So clean that up, save it, run it, and that gives us a cleaner form of output here. All right. So just seeing the information that, let's say, we're interested in. All right. Now, let's say though, so I did mention I want this to be a choice of protocols. All right. So let's say I wanted to do either WSMan, which is what this does, or I wanted to do WMI. So what I could do here, again, this is not necessarily the only way you could do this. There are going to be quite a few other ways, but just what I'm choosing to use in this script here. So let's maybe say we'll make another parameter here. This will just take a string value, and how about dollar protocol, all right? And I'll set it to a default value. Right? So that way, if somebody forgets to use it, the script's at least going to run. So maybe I'll set it to WSMan. Right? So that'll be the default value for it. Right? So now, in the script down here, in the body of the script, I want to do this if the protocol was WSMan. So, and I want to do something else if it's not. Okay, so that could basically um, set myself up. I could do one of two things here. I could do a switch construct or I could do an if else construct. Okay, usually everyone though does if else, so maybe I'll do switch. I'll have plenty of other videos up here talking about or doing if else. So let's maybe do a switch construct just for something different. So let's examine dollar protocol. Oops, forgot the dollar there. All right, and wrap up. I know this is going to be a little confusing here as I just type the different elements. And then let's see, in switch, our first choice would be WSMan. And then that would be this script block right here. Let's see. Yeah, that's cool. and then maybe close that off. And that would be the first choice there. And then maybe we don't do WS man, let's throw a default choice, and then we'll do something else. And I'll just, in essence, reuse this code, except this will be get WMI object, which will do use the DCOM or WMI protocol. So the filter should work because it's basically the same properties. That's why I'm doing get sim instance and get WMI object, because even though they use different protocols, they're both querying the same info on a remote computer. That management repository or WMI database, whatever term you want to use there. All right. So just get WMI object or get sim instance. And then running my filter, running my filter, and then finally outputting the correct object here. Okay. So let's so that's what we can use here. So let's go save this and make sure that this piece works. So script. Let's see what happens if I don't supply anything. All right. So it did. It's probably doing because I have the default there as WS man. So that um, should do that, and it did not. So it's erroring on client. And let's see if we just have client. Oops. Client one. Okay, so that's working as well there. Okay. And it looked like it didn't work with both. Okay, it did there. And it did there. Okay, cool. Why did I get an error? Oh, because I client, not client one. Okay. I was wondering why it threw an error there. Okay, so looks like that's working. And if I tell it to do something else, protocol, I don't know, WMI, it should fail for client one and should work for DC1. And we'll wait for that to fail. And meanwhile, while I'm waiting for that to fail, let me come back here. And I just thought of something here. So I'm specifying a default value for protocol, but it might also make sense to throw a validate set in here where I pick what are the acceptable values that we could type in. So maybe I'll have WSMan and maybe DCOM is how I want to refer to the other one there. All right. Um, so in that way, you could only supply one of those two values. Okay, so in fact, you see again on this with WMI, it tried to use get WMI object, worked for DC1, failed for the other one. All right, cool. So now if I try to run this again, it should tell me, hey, on protocol, you cannot do that. You can have one of these two values and that's it. So let's do, if I don't use protocol, again, this should work on both. And if I do use protocol, I should only accept DCOM or WSMan. All right? Which again, I mean, you could use as well and it would work. So all right, cool. So that makes it so this particular protocol or this particular parameter protocol can only accept these two values, which are basically like part of the logic I'm using to do either this or this. Now, if you're not familiar with Switch, what default does is if I pick something other than WSMan. So in this variable, if it's WSMan, this script block is run. If it's anything else, this script block runs. Okay? So that's basically the logic of what it's up to here. All right. So now the last thing to bake into here would be the pipeline support. So if I want to be able to pipe objects in, okay? So now the first thing that I might want to pipe objects in is on computer name, because obviously that's where, we want to supply the computers from. And right now, if I tried to do that, let's say I just had a computer name in as a string and pipe it over to my script, it's not seeing that information. So I need to get that hookup to happen. So what I could do here is in the parameter element on the computer name parameter, I can add in another argument into there called value from pipeline. Okay. Now, again, you may see in a lot of documentation, people do value from pipeline equals true. And again, you do not need to do that. So we could just put value from pipeline and away we go. So we go ahead and save that. And now I should be able to pipe a string in. Okay, so what value from pipeline does, that's the by property, I'm sorry, that's the by value system. So where I do value from pipeline, that's basically saying that this parameter accepts by value. So if you're not familiar with what that means, the difference between by value and by property name, go check out one of my videos called Pipeline Parameter Binding, where I go into all of that. So basically what this means is it's looking at the object in the pipeline. So if there's a string in the pipeline, which is what I had here, a string in the pipeline, that is being presented over to the computer name parameter because this takes string and I'm telling it to take string objects from the pipeline. So I want the strings to go to this parameter rather than this one, because notice this one also takes string, but I do not want pipeline data coming here. I want it to go here. Okay? So that gets that part done. So we could do that. We could um, also have it so any object that's in the pipeline that has a computer name property could be presented to the computer name parameter here as well. And that would be by putting an element called the value from pipeline by property name. Right? Making sure that that's actually typed out correctly. Value from pipeline by property name. Right? So that would cover the by property name system as the other thing that could happen. So PowerShell tries by value first, looking at the object in the pipeline. And if that fails, like if there's no strings in the pipeline, then it can look at um, the properties on the object in the pipeline. And if they have a computer name property, that's presented over here. Okay. So now let's save this. So now we can pipe strings in. We could pipe um, other objects in as long as they have a computer name property on them. However, the one thing we cannot pipe in right now, if I did get AD computer identity DC1 and pipe that over to my script, you'll see that it's not going to happen. All right, so we're having a, how do you want to say, a failure to communicate here, right? Okay, because two things are kind of happening here. So number one, get AD computer produces an AD computer object. So if I pipe this output to get member, I can see what type of object it's producing. Produces an AD computer object. So my script is set up to only accept strings from the pipeline. Okay, so this is the value from pipeline part. So that would be string objects would come here. And that's not what's in my pipeline. AD computer is. So then the next thing that PowerShell tries in the by property names system is does the object in the pipeline have a computer name property? And if you look, it does not. All right, so there's nowhere for the pipeline data to go, hence the error. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to create a place for this type of object to go to. So that means another parameter. Because then I can make the parameter accept this kind of object from the pipeline if I wanted to do that. Okay, so I'm going to grab this object type, highlight it and copy it so that I can go up and paste it into my parameter block up here. Because God knows I don't want to type all of that. All right, so we're going to make a parameter that takes that type of object and maybe call it $AD computer, something like that. Okay, so that's now another parameter that we could have. Okay, now I need to think about some logic though up in this parameter block because if they're supplying computer name, I don't want them to use this. And if they're supplying AD computer, they don't need to use that. So in PowerShell terms here, that is what's called different parameter sets. Okay, so if computer name is used, I don't want this used. And if this is used, I don't want computer name to be used. So again, different parameter sets. Okay? Um, so you could see this a lot in other commandlets that are out there. So like for instance, if I look at help on, let's say, get event log, you can see a couple different parameter sets here. So we could see here that in this bottom parameter set, like list is unique. And up in the top one here, log name is unique. So you cannot use them together. And so like I could run, get event log name system, and maybe do the newest 5 or newest 4 just to show it works. And I can also do get event log list on its own, but try to combine the two together and it's going to be fireworks, right? They cannot be used together when running the commandlet. You can use one or you can use the other, but not both together. So that's what I want to achieve here. Okay, so I either want computer name to be used or AD computer to be used. Okay, so in order to do that, I need to create different parameter sets. Is basically what I want to have happen here. All right. So up in commandlet binding, I am going to throw an argument in there to give me a default parameter set name as my starting place here. And let's say I need to make up the names of the two parameter sets. So let's say I'll call one AD and the other one will be PC, just to keep it short. Okay, so I'll do that. And then this one, which is what I want the default to be. So when in doubt, that's the one I want used. We'll declare what parameter set name that's in. So again, that goes into this parameter argument here. So we've got another argument we're adding in. Um, Parameter set name equals PC. All right. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to carriage return between the closing of the parameter element here and the opening of the string element. So you can throw a carriage return right there just to bring that down to the next line to make it look a little cleaner. Um, and then here, okay, we're also going to throw a parameter element in there. And again, parameter set name equals, and this one I'll call AD. All right, so we'll do something like that. Okay. Um, Hey, just making sure I didn't typo anything here. Parameter set name, parameter set name. Okay. So now that should make different parameter sets. So if I go ahead and save this and I go pull help on my script, notice it does kind of show those two different parameter sets. So here's the second one. It doesn't put a space in there, which I apologize for, but so computer name and protocol, or protocol and AD computer. Those are the two different ways we can use the parameters. All right. Um, okay. So we've got that going. Okay. Now, I also need to tell this parameter, $AD computer, that it can accept data from the pipeline. So let's throw this value from pipeline argument into here as well. And again, it's coming close to the end there, so I'm going to carriage return just to bring that down to the next line to make it, again, easier to look at. All right. Um, so in this case, it's accepting information from the pipeline. All right, cool. So now we have that set up. And now I need the logic to work with one or the other in the body of my script. All right. Now, one thing I probably should have done here, and in all honesty, I completely forgot about it because you can get away with it, at the beginning here, is I did not put in a process block, typically for working with the pipeline data. Basically because in my little quick demo that I did, I only piped in one value. So I did DC1. All right. But if I were to pipe in two values, and run this, notice the second value is the only one that actually works. So totally ignore DC1. And the reason for this is pipeline data comes in one object at a time. And so basically the body of the script runs only for the second object in the pipeline. So in order for both pipeline objects to be processed in the body of your script, you need to have a process block, which is, again, another script block. So, and then I'll go ahead, tab everything in. And so what happens here is the process block loops once for each object that's in the pipeline. All right, so if I'm piping in two objects, the process block will loop twice. So whatever's in here, oops. So whatever's in here will loop twice. All right. So let's test that hypothesis here. Come back over here. We'll run to this and ran twice. All right. So there's DC1 and then there's the client. Okay. So that's cool there. Now, when you're doing pipeline input, you could also have two other sections in your script. You can have a begin block, which is code that you want to run before the pipeline data is processed. And then at the end, you can literally have an end block, which is code you want to run after the pipeline data has finished being processed. So the begin block runs once. The process runs once for however many objects are in the pipeline. So if there's 10 objects, the process block runs 10 times, and then the end block runs once after the pipeline data has been processed. Okay? So end, though, and begin, they're both optional. So I don't need either of them, in all honesty. Okay? At least for this scenario. Right? For this scenario, I don't need them. Right? So what I do need, though, is I need to somehow make this work. Okay, so if computer names are piped into here, I need to work with them. Okay, because if I try to do it right now, even though I'm accepting it, there's no logic in the body of my script that works with this variable. Okay, so there's nothing there as of yet. So again, just to prove that this is not going to work, so we'll do get AD computer. Let's do filter star which how many computers do I have? I've got 3, and pipe that to script 1. All right, notice nothing happens. Nothing happens. Okay, so what can we do with that? Okay, so we need to throw a little logic in here that tells the body of the script, hey, you need to do something if this parameter was called. Right? So we already have logic up here that says it's, you can either use this parameter or this parameter, but not both together. Right? So notice when I'm kind of telling it to use AD computer by piping in AD computer objects, nothing happened. Okay, so here's the bit of logic we're going to do. At the very beginning of the process block here, we are going to put in a little if statement. So we're going to throw if, and all of the parameters that are called when a script runs or when a commandlet runs are stored in a variable called PS-bound parameters. All right. So let me just put that there just to start with. Okay. And then we'll just run the script and notice how it outputs. This is what PS bound parameters has. So it has the key would be the name of your variable that was called, and then this would be what the values are, which would be AD computer objects. Right? So that's what's in here. So there's 3 computers, so hence this is going to have 3 values. So what I can do is I can look at this key and see if that key was called, and then do something for that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we'll do kind of an if construct here, and we'll say $PS bound parameters, and we'll use the contains key method. All right, so we use that method right there, and the key we're looking for is AD computer. All right, and then we'll have a script block. So we're going to do whatever. Oh, I need another parentheses there. So we'll do whatever in the script block here if this evaluates to true. And this would evaluate to true if this parameter was utilized. All right. So what are we going to do? We need to get a value into $computer name. Because again, if this parameter was used, that means $computer name has nothing in it. But notice the whole rest of my script relies on $computer name having something in it. So let's just keep it real simple. Just put $computer name. $computer name equals $AD computer. And I want the string value that's in the name property. All right, so remember, you don't want to work with the whole AD computer object. You just want like the name. Okay, so computer name has to have a string object in it. This would be that string. Okay, if I didn't do that part, you'll see that this thing will not perform all that well. All right, so let's say, for instance, let's not pipe in all the computers. Let's just pipe in one, identity DC1, and it's not liking it at all. Right? Basically because come into my logic here, and I'm taking this, which is an AD computer object, and putting it into here, which should be a string object, but now isn't. And then that comes down here, and then that AD computer is being presented to this parameter, which takes a string object, and that's not what we started with. So let's just grab or enumerate the name property out of there, and that should now work fine. All right, so we'll go ahead and rerun this, and away we go. All right, and in fact, if I try to pipe in, let's see, can I do multiple identities? I don't remember if I can or not. Yeah, I cannot. Okay, so let's do client 2 I do not have online, so that one's going to fail out. But let's do filter star and again, client 2 is going to error. Just kind of recognize that. But it's going to work for DC1 and client 1 eventually. So I always love how long it takes to error there. Okay, so there we go. So there's DC1 and there's client 1. And again, if this is kind of muddying up the output here, we could try, um, let's see here, we could try on getSim instance to maybe throw another parameter at it. Maybe like error action silently continue, something like that. And that should clean up the output so I don't actually see the computers that errored out. I mean, granted, you can build a lot more logic into it, but this video is already at, what, 45 minutes now? So I don't want to get too carried away. If somebody does want to see some more logic built into this, feel free to drop a comment. Let me know, and maybe that can be another episode video where I build a lot more error handling and logic into this. But at least at a starting point, this does get us going here. So again, I'm rerunning this. I'm waiting for client 1 to error, and then we should get good results from DC1 and client 1. Cool. So that is accepting the pipeline input. And I should still be set up. Let's verify that strings could still get piped in. And that still works as well. All right, cool. So that's now 4 different ways you can get data in. You could pipe it in, or so you could pipe in an 80 computer object or a string object. We could also run the script on its own, specifying computer name. Let's say DC1. And then let's see, let's say dollar test equals get AD computer, um, identity DC1. So now I've got an AD computer object in that variable. And again, why did I do that? Because I could specify that directly. I do have an AD computer parameter, dollar test, and that works as well. Okay, so 4 different ways you can get computer names into here if you wanted to do that. All right. Now, one last thing though that I would probably make a change to is right now I'm querying services that are stopped that are set to auto. Maybe I want to also make it possible to query for maybe manual services or disabled services. I still want it to be stopped. I still want that. So that's a hard code for me. But I could further add another parameter up here that maybe is the start mode. So maybe that just takes a string. We'll call it $start mode. And then maybe we'll equal it to auto to start with. Okay, so if someone doesn't supply it elsewise, it's going to auto, and then we'll throw a validate set in there because there's really just a few values there. Auto, manual, and one more value, disabled. All right, so those would be the acceptable values. And down in the body of the script here, instead of having the hard code, we'll do $start mode. And also make that change right here as well. All right. So like so. All right. So that, let's see here. So let's try that. And so we now have a start mode parameter. And because I have a validate set, you can tab complete through the values. Let's try auto. That's worked. And let's try disabled. Wow, that worked. Got a lot of results there. A lot of services that are stopped that are disabled. And how about good old manual? Yeah, that had a lot as well. Cool. There's a lot of those as well. So that now enables me um, to do different service modes or different service types. So should probably make the case of the parameter look a little cleaner. So that way when I tab complete it, it looks a little nicer. Um, dollar protocol, dollar computer name. Yeah, so I'm just making them nice, capitalized and stuff so they look nice. Because that's how they're presented when you tab complete them on the command line. Okay, so that's basically our completed script here. So let me zoom out a little bit so we could see the code in one push here. And that gets us our our finished product here. I should probably throw um, error action silently continue right there as well. All right, cool. So that's that. If anybody has any questions, comments, what have you, throw them down in the comments of this video. They are more than welcome. And if anybody has any ideas of things that might make good uh, episode videos for the Build a Script series, I'm open to comments for that as well. Just please keep in mind, I try to keep these to like under an hour. If it's a complex task, it might take 4 hours to put a video together. So try to keep it to things that might be doable in an hour. All right. So if you like this video, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. It really helps me with the YouTube algorithm as I am a new channel, and any assistance is greatly appreciated. Thank you for it. All right. So with that, thanks again for watching, everybody, and stay tuned for the next episode. So have a good one, all.